Hello all, and welcome back to a new episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And we are joined by Dillon. Dillon Beck.
Hello.
And each season, we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now, we are reviewing The Last of Us Season 2. Today, we are on episode 4, titled Day 1. All right, Sarah, kick us off with a summary for this fourth episode.
In Seattle, Ellie and Dina find themselves amid a brutal battle between the zealous Seraphites and a ruthless militia.
All right. And in TV and Us tradition, we are going to share our episode titles for this episode. Dillon, what's yours?
Everything is fine.
Yeah, no problem, no stress. We're just
none whatsoever.
We're meditating with our crew. Yeah, for an hour. Sarah, what's your episode title?
Mine is Take On Me.
Nice. My episode title is Together.
Indeed, it had to be done.
It had to. Take On Me was my other option, actually.
Nice.
Okay, well, we're going to roundtable, share our high-level thoughts about this episode, and then we'll give a spoiler alert. So we've been on quite the interesting journey with this season, and I'm curious if this episode helps shape that journey into something better that we're more excited about, or is it more of the same, a little bit of skepticism of what the season is doing? Dillon, tell me your thoughts about episode 4.
I think this episode made me definitively make up my mind on the rest of the season.
Yes.
And I'll leave it at that as far as that opening line. But I really liked a lot of the action sequences. I thought a lot of those were really well shot. I enjoyed the pacing of that. Character development, I think we have quite a bit to talk about. Yeah, so I felt like at least we were doing something finally in this episode. So I'll take that as a win.
All right. So some good, some bad. We'll dive into that a little bit more. Sarah, your thoughts about episode 4?
Yeah, I'm big done. Like, this was not what I wanted. I'm so sorry. If you guys are enjoying this, to anybody listening, if you are enjoying this, I respect that. I see how that is possible. This is just not the show that I wanted. To me, this feels like some middling episodes from The Walking Dead, and I loved The Walking Dead. It went on for too long, but there's some good stuff there. But this just feels meandering to me. I really don't care what's going on. The most interesting parts of this episode for me was everything going on with Jeffrey Wright.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what's up with that. Like, let's just scrap everything else we have going on. Ellie and Dina can go on their love journey. I love that for them. Go live your lives. Abby can do whatever she's doing. I just want to focus on Jeffrey Wright. Like, he's got some stuff going on. We got some interesting world building with these other factions. Like, let's learn about that, because that's interesting to me. So yeah, I was pretty checked out of this episode. And honestly, if it weren't for this podcast, I probably wouldn't keep watching this season, because this is just not what I wanted. So that's where I'm at. And I am sorry in advance.
Lucky for you, I have 3 episodes left of this season, so you only have 3 more hours of this to endure. Man, it's such a shame, because season 1 of the show was so great. So you're like, you can do it. You know how to write great TV. You know how to develop characters. You know how to create tension and stakes and weave that into an action sequence because of the character arcs. And I think the pacing of the season is all wrong. Everything that we're being shown, I think, is at the wrong moment, and it's not answering any of the questions that we have. So one of my biggest, I think, qualms with this episode is that we are teed up to learn about some new people, and then we never learn about them at all. And so we're now having to wait perhaps until the next episode or a final showdown at the end of the season until we get to meet those folks. And so some of that trust building with the audience that I think is essential for any show or movie, where the piece of content can recognize what you are curious about and what you're invested in, and it's going to give you those little moments along the way to feed that or to complicate that or to fuel that. And I just feel like the show is not doing that well, and so it's breaking a little bit of that like trust contract we have with, okay, you're leading me to be curious about this, but then not satiating that. So I think that's kind of a miss. I think, Dillon, you mentioned the character development. I don't know what they're doing with it at all. I think there's like a version of this that could have worked, but it just all of the like big emotional moments are happening at seemingly the wrong times. And so the awkwardness of that, I think, is just a little funky to experience as a viewer. So I think this is probably my least favorite episode of the entire season so far. I just think it's so misguided and doing all of the wrong things. And perhaps like these middle episodes are the ones that should be building momentum, and that's why I'm probably feeling it the most, whereas maybe I give a little more grace at the beginning. This one I'm like, you're not pushing in any direction for this plot line, and it's kind of a miss. So we're going to have some grievances to air together over the course of this episode, I suppose.
Something just interesting. I was doing the bad thing that you're not supposed to do while watching something, and I pulled up IMDb while watching the episode. And when I did, it had 8.1 stars. By the time the episode was over on Sunday night, it was down to 7.7 stars. And now, when we're recording this on Tuesday, it's down to 7.2 stars. So it seems like the more people are watching this, the more it seems to, from this one little number, not be resonating with folks. So that did make me feel better that I wasn't the only one that's maybe not feeling what's going on in this season.
Yeah, and the decline of that, I think it's fascinating, especially if you think about people that might have started the episode and not finished it, because I think the first half, there's some big action sequences that could have been really exciting, and you're like, okay, like we're so back, The Last of Us, yes, I'm on board. And then the episode ends in such a specific way with such an intentional choice. And I think that is perhaps contributing to decline as well. Those that maybe started or didn't finish or whatnot. But yeah, how does that rank within the ratings for the rest of the episodes of this season specifically?
Ooh, that is a great question. Okay, let's see here. Episode 1, 7.4 stars. Episode 2, 9.4 stars. Episode 3, 7.3, and then episode 4, 7.2. So it is the worst of the four, but 1, 3, and 4 are kind of similarly situated star-wise.
All right. The data is dating, you know? Okay, well, we're going to include a spoiler alert if you haven't seen episode 4. We're about to dive fully in, so yeah, we have full free reign now. Okay, let's talk about some of the character moments, shall we? Perhaps especially the final scene moments and bits with our two protagonists. Tell me your thoughts about how that landed with you. And what you would have liked to see, perhaps, as well. Any desires?
Sarah, I'm going to defer to you before I ruin the whole thing.
Oh, no, please, ruin, because I just hated it. I hated everything that happened. Okay, like, it's just so frustrating. I knew in the last episode, episode 3, when we see Dina throw up and then we finally see the bodies and it's not that bad, I was like, ah, crap, they're going to make her pregnant. And so I was annoyed about that. And then that finally comes to pass in this episode. And then Ellie and Dina finally get together and like, cool, man. Yeah, let's go find love on our journey to revenge. Cool, down. I don't feel like that's how human beings would have that whole thing go down, though. But okay, cool. Whatever floats your boat. It's the apocalypse. Weird. And then we end with the fingers interlaced, and we're going to do it together. And I'm just like, this is the most cheesy thing I've ever seen in my whole life. Like, what are we doing? Everything about it felt wrong to me. Everything felt melodramatic and like out of a bad teen romance movie or something. Like, it just, I want more from The Last of Us, and The Last of Us can do better. And I don't know, maybe I'm just a cynical jerk, but like none of it worked for me. So I was just frustrated, and I was thankful that the episode was over.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, hi, your friendly neighborhood. I read the book before the movie came out person here. So that last moment in the game, it does also go through the like, hey, I'm immune. We have that big reveal, and then we do go into I'm pregnant. And for as much as this whole season is copying and pasting all of basically the whole plot line, sequence by sequence, sometimes even shot by shot, they're somehow managing to also change the core meaning and emotion and characters through all of it. So the way it plays out and the way I wish they would have committed to playing this out is in the show, this ends as a unifying moment, right? I found myself almost laughing when Ellie says, I'm going to be a dad. It's this uplifting, we're coming closer together. But Ellie is seeking a revenge mission. She left on this to kill a bunch of people. This is a dark tale. In the middle of all of this, while Ellie is driving forward to try and reach her conquest of, getting this vindication for herself or for Joel, when Dina announces that she's pregnant, in the game, she's met with an angry, what? And Dina kind of like tries to stumble through an explanation, and Ellie goes, how long have you known? Dina's like, well, I've had suspicions for a couple weeks, and Ellie blows up on her, right? It pulls them apart. And so somehow they managed to take this scene that is supposed to drive a wedge between the two of them and somehow spin it into they're now together, arm in arm. They're going to be co-parents. I don't know how the show writers who also wrote the game could fundamentally change and alter the story this much, and in so doing, also I think to your point, Sarah, execute on it so poorly. Because I think all the reactions I'm seeing online as well, and even just talking with other people in friend circle that are watching this seems to be everybody was checked out. It did not land. They did not deliver. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why they're fundamentally changing some of these things for the worse. But I don't know, Jen, what do you think?
It's just so cheesy. And here's the thing, like I can sometimes be down for some cheese and it can tug on my heartstrings, but I think the moment feels so misguided and the reactions feel like that's not how humans would like react. I think that like that moment of togetherness is so meaningful, but it almost feels like it wasn't earned. Like they needed to have some of that, like you mentioned in the game, the like wait, what? And that feeling of shock, the need to process everything that's happened. Also, Dina just found out that Ellie's immune. Like some reactions to that would have been great. And like what that means for them and for society and for humankind. And then for Ellie as well, the emotions of everything that's unfolding with Dina. I think that a normal human being would have a little bit more time needed and maybe a less linear, a little bit more set of up and down reactions to such a big moment like that. And so that's why I also feel like that ending shot of them with a really cheesy line feels unearned. There's maybe a world where they get to that point and that feels really meaningful because they've wrestled through all of those hard, confusing emotions that are all swirling at once. I just feel like as human beings, we're not that clean cut and that like we're pretty messy, and I think I would love to have seen more of that messiness to happen first before we get to the togetherness.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't get why they felt the need to bring them together because we've been pretty happy. We're going on a field trip type of like we're jiving, we're laughing, like we already have all of these like unifying moments. I don't know why we needed more of that.
Well, and what you described about the game, that makes so much more sense because this whole season is set up by Ellie going on her revenge quest. And having a pregnant person with you as your solo companion in an apocalypse against a militia going to kill a bunch of people, that's it's a choice, but it's not the right choice. And so that sense of anger would make sense, probably some feelings of betrayal. Like, you would have a swirl of very complex emotions like we've been talking about. And what we see in this episode is just not how that would play out. It just doesn't make sense. What you described about the game rings a lot more true to human nature, and then would provide that conflict. So then the resolution of, oh, we're going to do this together, then that would feel satisfying. But this just, man, it just doesn't make sense.
You mean that them just sleeping together all of a sudden after all of this doesn't add up? What are you talking about? That's the perfectly rational, logical response in the middle of Seattle to that announcement.
Oh, absolutely. It's totally how human beings behave.
Also, just real quick, while we're on the sleeping together, I did love that in the morning, Dina's like, no morning breath. That's gross. But she threw up the night before. Ellie slept in the chair, and then they woke up and did stuff. Like, it just, I don't know, it's just little inconsistencies, illogical, like, what?
Also, like, how bad do they smell? Because, like, they've been on a journey across states on horseback, and then they were just running around through rain, and then so sweat and rain and grossness, and they're still, I think, in the same clothes that they were wearing when they started the journey. I could be wrong, but, like, they probably smell very, very gross. So, like, morning breath is probably the least of your concerns at that point in time.
I think the also like cheesiness of two things. One is, I almost lost you, therefore big grand reveal now. I feel like we've seen that a bunch of times. I would have liked to see like just something a little bit more interesting than that. And then also the way that stories will often just add like a child or baby or potential of baby to increase stakes is also just like a classic technique of like, just put a child in there, and every action sequence feels more terrifying, which it is because there's a child and you want to protect the child, but it just feels so done. And the stakes of having to go up against an entire militia, actually two militias that are fighting each other, that you are now the third party causing more chaos in, like that in and of itself in the apocalypse is more than enough stakes, let alone throw the potential of someone who is with child and the need to protect them in these situations. It just adds so much more, which is, it's effective at adding more stakes, but I think it also feels a little bit like a cop-out to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We didn't need these stakes. And I think there's, like you mentioned, there's already enough going on. We've learned how dangerous these people are. We don't know a lot about them, but we know that they are ruthless and they're really good at killing people. And that's who Ellie and Dina are up against. So, like, physically, that's a lot of stakes. And you have the infected who are also mutating too and doing new things that we haven't seen before. So that's another element that they're up against. And then, so that's enough for the like external threats and stakes. But this season seems to be trying to do a lot like emotionally and taking us into maybe Ellie's like softer side too. But there doesn't really seem to be any risk there either. Like, she doesn't seem to be going on some deep emotional journey either, or going through a healing process, unless she is and I'm just missing it. But I wish that there was some more of that emotional depth, or there was some emotional stakes or some sort of internal conflict that she's wrestling with. I think that would make this more interesting as well, so that we have a good balance of external and internal threats, but instead the show is just doing something else entirely.
Yes. Thank you, Sarah. So my original title for this episode was going to be something about like Xanax. And that was because I think maybe when they were digging around in the medicine cabinets earlier on in the season, Ellie just happened to find like a giant bottle of it and off screen has been taking copious amounts of Xanax. Because like she is on a revenge mission. She is supposed to be sad, sullen, dark, angry, not thinking clearly. And it's supposed to set up, kind of like we talked about in some earlier episodes, these mirrors between Abby's journey for revenge and Ellie's, where rather than Dina just being this really smart, like, oh, I've thought of everything partner, it's more Ellie is just being totally irrational, running into things. She's getting angry with Dina a lot more and like pushing her past her limits, which we then later, of course, find out she's pregnant. But right, Ellie's like, we got to go. We got to do this, right? Because she is just being angry and demanding. And you understand as the viewer that that's because she's grieving and you know where that's coming from. But we're not getting any of that. Instead, right, Dina is just kind of set up as like a genius rather than just a calm, rational observer of facts who's trying to like pull Ellie back from self-destruction. And so we're missing, to your point, all of this depth of what's happening with the characters and what Ellie is processing grief and emotions wise. It feels to me like they're going on a camping trip and they just happen to accidentally run into a murderous cult and a very angry, very well armed militia. Like, it doesn't seem like anybody's processing anything at all on an emotional level.
They are going on a camping trip to Seattle. Oh, that's so good. That is exactly what it feels like, though.
Maybe we could also talk about the action sequence in this episode, especially I think in the first section. Sounds like, Dillon, that worked better for you. Sarah, I'm curious how that worked for you as well. But how does that stack up against, for example, so we've seen a bunch of action sequences in The Last of Us, but the lack of emotional development narrative arc, did that also like color how you experience that action sequence beyond the like visceral level?
I liked it. I thought I was invested in from the opening, although admittedly the opening felt like a classic Walking Dead intro. But like opening, I was engrossed in what was happening. I thought kind of the shots and the scenes. I was surprised. I knew something was going to happen, but I didn't guess grenades in the back of a car. So that was interesting to me. I thought the subway shot with the red flares crawling through the subway, I really enjoyed, other than one kind of hokey part where it looked like they just had really like thin cloth draped around them. That didn't land for me. It didn't look realistic or like part of a subway lining to me. But I thought a lot of that was really engaging. I found myself getting kind of tense in a lot of those moments. So for me, I thought the pacing and just shots of several of the action scenes were really, really, really well done for me.
I loved everything that Jeffrey Wright was doing in this episode. If there was a scene with Jeffrey Wright in it, I was here for that. That opening, I was like, okay, let's go. Maybe this episode is going to turn around. I am here for Jeffrey Wright blowing up some dudes in a tank. That, great. Love that. Him torturing a dude with a really expensive set of pans. Wow. Okay. I'm here for this. Gruesome, but I'm here for it. I think a lot of the other stuff I wasn't quite as invested in. I did like the subway chase, mainly because of the flares and how that looked. It looked so ominous. It was so foreboding. Like, that was really fascinating to me. I think my struggle with some of the set pieces with Ellie and Dina in this is it just feels so meandering to me. It's like, okay, here's a random building. Let's just go inside and see what happens. Oh, there's dead bodies. Oh no, we need to run away. Like, I don't know. And maybe this is just a me issue, but I wish that there was a little bit more planning in this and a little bit more strategy in this. And they acknowledge, like, it's just two of them. And like, Abby's really good at killing people, and she's with people who are really good at killing people, so we should maybe be careful. So I don't know, I wish that there was a little more strategy there. And if we're not going to go the strategy route, then I feel like that Ellie specifically needs to be like so hell-bent on revenge that she can't listen to reason, and she just goes barreling into things. And then I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. But it's this weird, like, oh, we're just going to go into this building, which, I mean, I also don't know how I would find Abby in this city that I've never been to. So maybe just going into random buildings is good enough. But I think I wanted a little bit more strategy from them, because I don't know. I was like, why are we in this building? Why did you choose this building? Why didn't we do our due diligence just a little bit more rather than just chilling in a record shop? Like, I don't know. I think I wanted a little bit more, and that might just be me not feeling the show. But yeah, that didn't quite work for me, even though that I feel like the action set piece itself was quite good, but it's how they got to that point that I was struggling with while watching.
Yeah, I really liked this action set piece. I thought that it was paced really well, shot really well. There's some really like great nail biting moments. I think the the subway turnstile getting stuck was so great and added so much tension. There's just all of that. The way that we cut back and forth between the zombies nearly getting out from the fence and then cutting back to Dina and Ellie like struggling with the turnstile. All of that just felt very like tactile and physical, of just like the real limitations of figuring out how to like survive in this like apocalyptic environment. I thought that was all really great. I think that I would have wanted to see more of the two groups. Like we kind of see their unnamed faces. We hear a lot about them from the opening intro section and then the Jeffrey Wright scene. So we kind of are getting a sense for what they stand for and maybe what they're fighting over. But for the most part, it's just Dina and Ellie fighting zombies. And I would have loved to see almost that like the misunderstandings that happen with these two groups fighting each other, and Ellie and Dina kind of caught in the middle and being mistaken for either side. And some of the like just comedy of errors is maybe the wrong term for it, but something like that, where they're just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time and unaware of the larger dynamics that have so much history here between these two groups, clearly. And so I think that the choice to fight the zombies alone may be a little misguided. And this is referencing back to some of the things I was sharing at the beginning of like, I would have loved to see a little bit more of these two groups that we've heard so much about, that the ending scene of the previous episode is kind of teeing up for this interaction, this standoff between the two of them, and it kind of just doesn't come in this episode. So I keep thinking about, Dillon, your comment, I think on episode 1 or 2, maybe it was episode 2, around this being drawn out and us taking our time to do those reveals. But I think it's creating some impatience in me as a viewer of like, hey, you told me about these people. I want to see these people now.
Yeah, and so I mixed parts agree and disagree, because I think one of my complaints that I think this episode got far enough along to imply that we're going to be doing some stuff with both of these factions, which is great. But like the Seraphites, we already now know that they have like whistling mechanics, and we know that's how they communicate, and that just felt like a piece of information the audience doesn't need to know and kind of cheapens the moment. Instead of fast forward, Ellie and Dina have seen all these markings on the wall, and then while exploring Seattle trying to just get to these militia people, start just hearing random like bird sounds around them and don't know what's happening, right? That's much more like hair-raising, interesting. So I feel like the show's given away too much information about these factions. But we were supposed to have all this healthy dialogue and conflict just between Ellie and Dina that was, pacing and keeping the story alive before we got into more of the factions. But I do agree with you as a viewer of the show right now that all I'm left with is interest in what the factions are doing. But the problem is I don't think those two really get as interesting as the main story of what's going on with Ellie. So I'm very much concerned about this season being able to reclaim some of that space, because I don't want to know more about the two factions, if I'm being honest. That's the only thing the show's giving me that is a glimmer of hope, but knowing the overarching story, for them to make it more interesting between the two factions, I think they're going to have to derail pretty hard from what I think the core story is. So I don't know. I agree and I disagree all at the same time.
That's fascinating, though, which is that it's almost like we're being led to the wrong pasture. Like, like as a viewer of the show, I'm like, this is so interesting and so cool. And you've put an iconic actor in this role that's having these really interesting conversations that's from the faction. So you're right. We as the viewers are being piqued in our interest in this direction, but perhaps the larger arc is not maybe meant for us to be that curious in this area, even though that's maybe where we're being left with, which is a mismatch of like where our investments are. And so you're right. Like, what are they going to do next is the question. How much of the factions are we even going to get? Maybe now that you're mentioning it, maybe we don't even, maybe they're a stop along the way and the journey's going to continue. And I'm going to be upset because I'm so curious about them, and it's the most interesting part of the show so far because we're lacking, like we've talked about, in the main storyline. Okay, other big things we wanted to mention in this episode before we give out some awards? Did we hit most of it? I think we might have. Okay, let's give out some TVNS awards, shall we? So the first category is for Scrappiest Survivor. What are your choices for this category?
I think this is the second time on the season that I've picked a character who does not survive, but I got to give it to the Seraphite being tortured. Like, that was brutal, and my man was hanging in there, not giving up any information, staying true to his prophet. Like, I would not have endured such pain. So hats off to you, Mr. Seraphite.
And he even offers his non-burned hand at that one point. Like, ooh, man, dude was scrappy. That's a great choice.
Yeah, that's an awesome choice. Yeah. Oh, that visual is great, too, of that whole sequence. I love that you're like, who is Jeffrey Wright talking to the entire time? And then camera swings over to this poor man. Yeah, great choice. Sarah, what is your choice for Scrappiest Survivor?
So mine is related to Dillon's. I am choosing Jeffrey Wright's copper pot set.
Nice. Yeah, it's in great shape. It's a dream of his. He never thought that he would own something like this before.
Yeah, it's looking good surviving the apocalypse. That's impressive. Got to keep those things clean. Way to go.
My choice for this award is the guitar that Ellie discovers. It's in great condition. I hated the whole rest of that scene. I think it's so cheesy. Wrong moment, but that guitar's in great shape.
Yeah, it was satisfying to see a guitar that had survived.
Yep. Okay, next category is for grittiest moment. What is your choice for this one?
I actually am going to go with the opening scene with the grenades in the back of the car. I don't know why, but just like when they got thrown in, I was tensing up. You're like waiting for that explosion and also just feeling the terror of the car shaking as everybody inside is panicking. So for me, that was probably my most like, moment.
I'll share mine because it's a follow. It's from a similar scene, but it's Jeffrey Wright's facial expression when he looks at that poor boy and is like, "You choose now. Make your choice." You're like, okay. Oh my gosh.
That was
I think I only have one choice. That was great.
Okay, I love that we're all on the same wavelength here because I'm choosing, before all of that, the one just jerk of a guy who is sharing this awful story. That is his terrible story told so poorly, I think is the grittiest moment for me.
Yeah, and Jeffrey Wright was fed up with it as well.
I'm telling you, Jeffrey Wright is my dude. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay, the next category is Straight Shooter Award for a line of dialogue.
There's certainly a trend here. I'm going to go with Isaac saying, if you own Moviel, you use Moviel.
Nice, that's a great choice. Love it. Sarah, what is your choice for Straight Shooter?
I got to keep the trend going. So when, in the beginning, Isaac says to the annoying dude, "You're thoughtless."
Nice. I'm going to go with a line from Dina. I think they just discovered all of the bodies hanging in that building. And as someone who's a Seattleite, she goes, "What the heck is wrong with Seattle?"
Oh, it's so good.
Great. All right, looking ahead. This might be challenging, but what are you hoping to see next?
I am without hope. I have lost all hope. There is no North Star. There is no guiding light.
I love it, Dillon. Straight shooter award goes to you, really.
No, I mean, I really just feel like I'm stuck along for the ride.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sarah, what about you? You are also without hope.
I am also without hope. So I am going to rest my hopes solely on Jeffrey Wright. I would love to see more of him. Like, bring your fancy pot set. That's lovely. Let's bring some more grenades. Just bring the gravitas of Jeffrey Wright. That's what I want to see more of. That is my little tiny glimmer of hope.
Yeah. Look, I just want to see this one actor on screen as much as possible.
Yes. Everything he was doing was so interesting to me. I'm like, yeah, let's go. I don't even care what happens anymore. Let's just do something interesting.
I am going to rest my hope on some cheap thrills, okay? Some of the action sequence I had a great time with in this episode, so more of that would be wonderful. I'm also just curious. I think someone mentioned / I've seen articles about like the Joel flashbacks happening at some point. I think I'm going to be upset at them, but I am curious what choices they're going to make for that. And I think we're going to have some interesting conversation, lots of feelings about whatever they decide to do with that. So I'm just curious about how they're going to handle that because it's such an intentional choice. And yeah, I'm anticipating that to come. Maybe not looking forward to, but curious about more, perhaps. All right. Well, we're locked in. We're here on this journey. This is our review of episode 4. You can find it available on Max. Thank you for listening to today's episode of TV and Us. Thank you for listening to us rant about this episode. We appreciate it. We hope that you are along and here for the journey as well. Our name, TV and Us, sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us in our shared stories. Everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today as we continue our journey through The Last of Us Season 2. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and a review letting us know your thoughts about this 4th episode of the season. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at TVNUsPod or email us at tvnuspod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on TV and Us and our other podcast, Movies and Us. We'll be back soon to continue our journey. We're going to be reviewing episode 5 coming up here soon. We've got 3 more episodes left of the season, of this journey. We'll see what happens next. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again with y'all very soon.